On the day I confessed my deepest fear to my family, hoping for support, my sister laughed and revealed she'd already turned that fear into gossip at the dinner table, teaching me that family wounds sometimes run deeper than strangers' betrayals. Another woman 3 hours after telling my family I was terrified of becoming like my cheating father. The irony wasn't lost on me even as Sarah's lips pressed against mine in the hotel bar. Even as I felt the wedding ring on my finger like a brand against my palm when I reached to touch her face. My wife Emma was home with our 2 kids, probably putting them to bed, probably wondering why the family dinner ran so late. I'd driven to my parents' house that afternoon carrying this crushing weight on my chest, this gnawing fear that had been eating at me for months. I'm scared I'm gonna mess like Dad did, I'd said, my voice cracking in front of my mom, my sister Katie, and even my old man himself. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Katie started laughing, not a nervous giggle, not an uncomfortable chuckle, full-blown, doubled-over laughter that made her mascara run. Oh my God, Mark, she wheezed, wiping her eyes. I've been telling everyone about little midlife crisis for weeks. Remember when asked me not to say anything about seeing the therapist? Yeah, right? Mom and I have been placing bets on when finally, the drain from my face. Told people about the therapy. Honey, my mom said, not even looking from her crossword puzzle. We've been talking about situation at book club for months. Sandra thinks we're just going through a phase. Janet thinks Emma's too good for anyway. My dad, the man who destroyed our family when I was 15 by sleeping with his secretary, just shrugged. Son, if we're gonna cheat, just don't get caught like I did. I left that house feeling like my skin had been peeled off layer by layer. The people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had turned my deepest vulnerability into dinner party entertainment. The sacred trust I'd placed in them, the courage it took to admit my fears out loud, meant nothing. So when I stopped at the Marriott bar instead of going straight home, I told I just needed one drink. Just something to numb the humiliation burning in my chest. Sarah was there on business, traveling pharmaceutical sales, blonde hair and tired eyes and a smile that said she understood what it felt like to be alone in a crowd. We talked about everything except our real lives at first. She was funny, actually funny, not like Emma's forced laughs at my dad jokes. She listened when I spoke, leaned in like my words mattered. Rode, she asked when I ordered my 3rd whiskey. My family thinks I'm a joke, I said, and the words tumbled out before I could stop them. Not the whole truth but enough to feel like someone cared. Their loss, she said, and meant it. When she me, I didn't pull away. Her back like a drowning man gasps for air, like she was the only person in the world who saw me as worth something. The guilt was there, sharp and immediate, but it was drowned out by this desperate need to feel wanted by someone, anyone. We got a room. I won't insult with details or try to romanticize what happened next. I cheated on my wife of 8 years, the mother of my children, because my feelings got. Because my family's betrayal made me feel small and I needed someone to make me feel big again. I told it was just one night. Just this once, just to feel human again after being gutted by the people who were supposed to protect me. I was wrong about everything. The next morning, staring at in that hotel bathroom mirror, I looked exactly like my father. The man I'd spent my whole trying not to become. The fear I'd confessed to my family had become a self-fulfilling prophecy in less than 12 hours. I drove home to Emma making pancakes for our kids, humming some song from the radio, completely trusting that her husband had just been out late with family. She smiled when she saw me, asked how dinner went, if everything was okay with my parents. Fine, I lied, kissing her forehead like Judas kissing Christ. Everything's fine. But it wasn't fine. It was the beginning of the end of everything I'd ever cared about, and I was too much of a coward to see it coming. The worst part, I knew I was going to see Sarah again. Even as I hugged my kids that morning, even as I promised it was over, I knew I was lying to just like I was lying to them. Because when own family treats heart like a punchline, it's easy to convince that strangers might treat it better. 3 months, that's how long I managed to live a double before Emma found the hotel receipts in my jacket pocket. 3 months of lunch meetings that ran long, work emergencies that demanded weekend attention, and business trips that didn't exist on any company calendar. Sarah and I fell into routine that felt almost legitimate in its consistency. Every Tuesday and Thursday, room 4012 at the Marriott. Sometimes we'd order room service and pretend we were a real couple. Sometimes we'd just lie there afterward, talking about our real lives like they were abstract concepts instead of actual people waiting for us at home. She had kids too. A daughter in middle school, a son in high school. She showed me pictures sometimes, and I'd feel this sick twist in my stomach seeing her maternal smile, knowing she was capable of destroying another mother the same way she was helping me destroy mine. Do feel guilty? I asked her once, watching her get dressed after another afternoon that had started with drinks and ended with us an empty. Every second, she said, not looking at me, but not guilty enough to stop. That should have been my wake call. Instead it felt like permission. At home I was becoming a ghost in my own. My son Jake, 9 years old and sharp as a tack, kept asking why daddy seemed sad all the time. My daughter Lily, only 6, had started having nightmares and would crawl into bed with Emma, instead of coming to me like she used to. Emma noticed everything. She started asking questions I couldn't answer without lying. Started watching me with this confused in her eyes like she was trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Having an affair? She asked me one night point blank while we were folding laundry. The question hit me like a physical, but I looked her straight in the eye and said, no, of course not. Why would even ask that? Because don't touch me anymore, she said quietly. Because flinch when I try to hug. Because we're always somewhere else, even when we're right here. I should have confessed then. Should have fallen to my knees and begged forgiveness and prayed she was strong enough to help me rebuild what I'd broken. Instead, I got angry. I can't believe you'd accuse me of that, I said, my voice dripping with false indignation. After everything I do for this family, after how hard I work, think I'm cheating on. She believed me. Of course she believed me. She'd never had a reason not to trust me before, so why would she start now? The relief on her face when I denied it made me even more, but not enough to stop. The end came on a Thursday. Sarah and I were in our usual room, and she was crying. Not the quiet tears that sometimes came after, but body shaking sobs that made her makeup run in black streaks down her cheeks. "I can't do this anymore," she said. "My daughter asked me yesterday if I still loved her daddy. She's 12 years old, Mark. 12, and she can tell something's wrong." I held her while she cried, feeling like a hypocrite, a monster, but unable to let go. "We can figure this out," I said, though I had no idea what that meant. "No," she said, pulling away from me. "We can't. Because this isn't real. This isn't love, Mark. This is just two broken people using each other to feel less broken, and it's destroying everyone around us." She left that day and never came back. No goodbye, no final kiss, no dramatic declaration. Just gone like she'd never existed at all. I should have felt relieved, should have seen it as a sign to come clean, to try to salvage my marriage before it was too late. Instead, I felt abandoned all over again, just like I had the day my family laughed at my confession. That's when I made the stupidest decision of my. I drove to another hotel bar looking for another Sarah. Another temporary salve for the wound in my chest that never seemed to heal. I found Rachel instead. 26 years old, marketing coordinator for some startup with daddy issues that made my family problems look like a sitcom. She was everything Sarah wasn't: reckless, loud, completely uninterested in my guilt or my excuses. "Or married," she said, twisting my wedding ring around my finger. "Good. I don't want anything complicated." 2 weeks later, Emma found the credit card statements. Not just from my time with Sarah, but from the new hotels with Rachel. Room service charges, champagne bottles, spa treatments for two. She was waiting for me when I got home. The statements spread across our kitchen table like crime scene photos. Her face was completely calm, which somehow made it worse than if she'd been screaming. 8 years, she said when I walked in. 8 years, 2 kids and a mortgage. Was I really that bad of a wife? I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The weight of what I'd done, what I'd destroyed, hit me all at once like a building collapse. "Who is she?" Emma asked. "They," I said, the word coming out like a confession too. There were two. The sound Emma made wasn't quite a scream and wasn't quite a sob. It was the sound of a heart breaking in real time, and I knew I'd be hearing it in my nightmares for the rest of my. She didn't ask for details, didn't demand explanations or throw things or beg me to choose her. She just stood, walked to our bedroom, and started packing a suitcase. Emma, please," I said, following her. "Let me explain." "What?" she said, not looking at me. "How decided I wasn't worth basic human decency? How decided our kids didn't deserve a father who respected their mother? What exactly do you want to explain, Mark?" I had no answer. There was no answer that could make sense of what I'd done. No explanation that didn't make me sound like exactly what I was: a selfish coward who'd burned down his entire, because his feelings got. She took the kids that night. Jake hugged me goodbye like he knew it might be the last time, and Lily wouldn't even look at me. Emma spoke to me in the hallway, her voice barely above a whisper. "I loved," she said. "Even when stopped loving, even when became someone I didn't recognize, I still loved. But I won't teach our children that love means accepting betrayal." They left, and the house became a tomb. Every room held memories of the I'd thrown away for a few hours of feeling wanted by women who were never going to stay. I sat in the kitchen until dawn, staring at those credit card statements, adding the cost of my selfishness in dollars and cents. It came to just under $3,000, the cost of losing my family, my children's respect, and my own soul, priceless. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday, exactly 6 months after Emma found the hotel receipts. I signed them sitting at the same kitchen table where she'd confronted me, using the same pen she'd used to write grocery lists and sign permission slips for school field trips. My lawyer said I was getting off easy. Custody every other weekend, reasonable alimony, Emma keeping the house but splitting the 401k. She could have taken for everything, he said, like I should be grateful for my ex-wife's mercy. What he didn't understand was that she already had taken everything. Just not the things can put a dollar sign on. Jake was in therapy now. Emma told me this during one of our brief, clinical conversations about pickup times and school events. "He blames himself," she said, her voice hollow and tired. "He thinks if he'd been a better son, wouldn't have left." "I didn't leave," I said, the words automatic, and I was kicked out. "Left the day decided we weren't enough," Emma replied and hung. She was right, of course. I'd checked out of my marriage emotionally long before I'd checked into those hotel rooms physically. The affairs were just the symptom, not the disease. Lily stopped calling me daddy. Now I was just Mark, like some distant relative she had to tolerate twice a month. She'd sit in my empty apartment during our court-mandated weekends, coloring pictures of families that always had two parents and no third wheels. And I'd watch her trying to figure out why the man who was supposed to protect her had become the source of her pain instead. The loneliness was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Not just being alone, but being deliberately isolated by own actions. Friends chose sides, and Emma's side had the moral high ground and homemade cookies. My side had me explaining to people that yes, I'd had multiple affairs, but my family had betrayed me first, as if that justified anything. Most people stopped inviting me places after that conversation, the ones who didn't, clearly just wanted the gossip firsthand. My parents, the ones whose betrayal had started this whole nightmare, suddenly wanted to be supportive. "These things happen, son," my dad said over at some dive bar that reeked of failure and cigarettes. "Mother and I worked through it." "Didn't work through anything," I said. Keated, she forgave, and both pretended it never happened while kids grew thinking that was what marriage looked like. "At least we stayed together," he replied, like that was some kind of victory instead of a 30-year exercise in denial. My sister Katie, the one who turned my confession into family entertainment, kept trying to set me with her friends. "Need to get back out there," she'd say, as if dating was the for being a person who destroys everything he touches. I tried, God help me. A few dates here and there with women who didn't know my story yet, who saw a recently divorced dad and thought project instead of cautionary tale. But every conversation felt like a job interview for a position I wasn't qualified for. Every goodnight kiss felt like. The worst part was running into Emma in public. At grocery stores, school events, soccer games where I'd sit on the opposite side of the field like some kind of registered offender. She'd lost weight, started wearing her hair different, had this confidence in her stride that she'd never had when she was married to me. She looked happy. Not immediately, not right after the divorce, but gradually, like someone recovering from a long illness. I'd watch her laugh with other parents, see her helping Jake with his cleats or braiding Lily's hair before games, and realize that I hadn't just lost my family. I'd been holding them back. The kids were better without me too. Jake's grades improved. Lily stopped having nightmares. They had routines now, stability, a home where they didn't have to wonder if daddy was going to be distracted by his phone or disappear for mysterious errands. Emma started dating someone new about a year after our divorce was finalized, a pediatrician named David who coached Little League and drove a sensible Honda, and probably never had a single thought about stepping out on the person he loved. I found out when Jake mentioned it casually during one of our stilted weekend visits. David taught me how to throw a curveball. He said, and I felt something inside me that I didn't even know was still alive. That's nice. I managed to say, while internally screaming at the universe for the cruel joke of replacing me with someone whose worst quality was probably that he flossed too enthusiastically. The final came 18 months after the divorce. I was picking the kids for our weekend when David answered Emma's door. He was exactly what I'd imagined, tall, kind eyes, the sort of easy smile that comes from never having betrayed anyone. Must be Mark, he said, extending his hand like we were meeting at a barbecue instead of him meeting the man whose he'd inherited. The kids talk about all the time. I shook his hand and hated how genuine his warmth felt, hated that he was probably a good man who would never make Emma doubt herself or make her children choose between loving their parents and respecting them. Lily ran to hug him goodbye before she even acknowledged I was there. That night, after I'd taken them back to Emma's house and watched them run inside without looking back, I sat in my car outside their home. Through the living room window, I could see them all together, Emma curled on the couch with David, Jake showing him something on his phone, Lily on the floor with her coloring books. They looked like a family. A real family, the kind I'd had once and thrown away for a few nights of feeling desired by women whose names I could barely remember now. I drove back to my apartment, opened it, and tried to remember the exact moment when I decided that temporary gratification was worth permanent destruction. But there hadn't been a moment. There had been 1,000 small moments, 1,000 tiny compromises with 1,000 ways of choosing the easy wrong over the hard right. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, a photo of a woman I didn't recognize, with a message that said, "Hey handsome, got number from Katie. Drinks sometime." I stared at that message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. A year and a half ago, I would have said yes without thinking. Would have convinced I deserved happiness, deserved companionship, deserved another chance to get it right with someone new. Instead, I deleted the message and blocked the number. Because I finally understood something that had taken me losing everything to learn. I wasn't the victim in this story. I wasn't the wronged husband seeking comfort, or the misunderstood man whose family didn't appreciate him, or the devoted father who just made a few mistakes. I was the villain, the cautionary tale. The reason why good women teach their daughters to trust their instincts when something feels wrong. And why good men promise themselves they'll never become like that guy who had everything and it all away. Sitting in my quiet apartment that night, surrounded by the debris of choices I could never unmake, I understood that some wounds don't heal. Some trust once broken can't be rebuilt. Some families once shattered, can't be glued back together no matter how sorry or how much I've learned. I'd become exactly what I'd feared, exactly what I'd confessed to my family that night that started everything. The only difference was that now I knew the price of that transformation wasn't just paid by me. It was paid by 2 children who would spend the rest of their lives wondering if love was something that could be trusted, and by a woman who'd given me her whole heart and watched me use it for target practice. The saddest part, I finally learned how to be the man Emma deserved. I just learned it too late to matter to anyone but me, in an empty apartment that echoed with the ghosts of better choices I'd never get the chance to make. Some confessions are warnings, and some warnings come disguised as confessions. But by the time I realize which is which, the people who needed to hear them have already stopped listening.